And welcome back. As promised, we're going to continue the series in which we're making modifications to the HellCat you saw in the previous video. In the previous video, we installed the splitter guards underneath the front lip of the splitter that you see there. And I wanted to come back and go ahead and dedicate this video to installing the oil catch cans, which again seems to be another popular modification that a lot of individuals do to turbocharged as well as supercharged engines, and especially the HellCats in particular. And what you're seeing down here at the bottom is the Billet Technologies kit. Now there's actually two oil catch cans that you can get for HellCat. One for left and right side of the engine, passenger and driver side of the engine. And this is the catch can that goes on the passenger side valve cover. And what you can see here is that we opted to have it anodized in black, as well as go with the braided hosing. And you'll see the associated adapters, metallic hose end fittings, which does a very nice job of setting off the braided insulation and covering up the barb here once you have the hose attached. Now, stepping over to the HellCat itself, and this is the, if you watched the previous video, you saw a little glimpse of the inside, or underneath. This is the top view, pretty much standard HellCat configuration, except you'll probably notice the air filter is a little different. Now, this is not an aftermarket air filter. This came from the factory this way, at least from a 2019 perspective it did. I didn't do anything when we ordered this vehicle to have this put in here. This came standard this way. And it's caused a little bit of an issue. It's nothing to do with Billet Technology. This is completely on me. But the second catch can would normally go on the driver's side, you can see here. And this is the catch can itself. A little bit longer hosing. And of course the associated adapters, as well as its clips. Now I'm going to have to go back and look at the install once again for this video, but in a lot of the ones I've witnessed for the driver's side, normally it doesn't have this style of an airbox on it. And your hoses, which are long enough, you can see we got two pretty good sized length of hosing. This is for the driver's side. The catch can would normally mount back here on a tab, which is present, and the hosing would get routed underneath the valve cover, which we have taken off here, and then get plumbed into the valve, which would normally be kind of sitting here. But you'll notice, because of this being the not an enclosed airbox, but I guess you can call it a high flow airbox, the valve is actually back here mounted on top of the strut tower and with its associated hardware. So the hoses I have are a bit longer, as well as on this hose into this valve you see this extra sensor. And typically, if this was the standard setup, you would just undo your valve cover connection from here, push in this tab, pull this hose out, which would normally run across here and come up to that valve. So I'm going to take a picture of this and send this to Billet Technologies and just see if I can get any appropriate adapters or hoses changed out. It may mean I could very well have the adapters that I need and just might need to make a small modification to it, but I want to run it past them first, because it was also kind of a surprise to me when we took ownership of this HellCat to actually see this improved airbox in it, when traditionally it would have an encased one. So it looks like they're taking some design thoughts that actually came from the Demon and incorporating those into the other models, at least as of this 2019 they did. Now the good news is it doesn't affect the passenger side catch can. which we'll quickly go over the install today. And I realize there's probably about 500 other videos or more that already exist on going through this setup. And we'll just be adding this one as another one to that batch, I guess. Now the first thing that we normally would do is remove the valve covers. And what you'll find on these valve covers is that they got clips in the front and clips in the back. And the one on the driver's side, I actually found it easier to unclip the bottom first and then do the top. So you can see that one's out of the way now. You can see that one's out of the way now. You can hear it pop. That's that clip on the top and that clip on the top. And generally, you can then just kind of lift them out of the way. I like to throw them up here in the top just to get them out of what we need to work with. And this will be the hose that we're disconnecting here. And there's just some tabs you can push on to get these hoses to release. If you look at the Billet Technology's install video, it'll go a little bit more in depth on this. I want to make sure I'm not covering up the mic there. So what we're going to do is that we're going to get this hose removed. We'll get the catch can installed, which will install onto this bolt right here. This kind of hangs right near the serpentine belt itself. We'll get the catch can installed and we'll start to get our hoses routed and get them plugged into the catch can. And when we're ready to do that, we'll bring you back. And welcome back. I just wanted to show you this real quick because this is pointed out in a couple of pretty much everyone's videos, and I wanted to show it here as well. But to get this one out, it's a little bit weird. The camera may not pick this up, but you're going to see a little tab right here that you just kind of push out, not too far because you don't want to break it. Once you have that tab pushed out, you can then pull up, and there you go. You can get that hose off. It's not too difficult. It's just this tab that you can kind of see here a little bit better. It's kind of on the back side of this, and just kind of push out with a little bit of pressure. Again, pull up on it, but you don't want to push out too far on this and break that tab off. We're going to continue with getting this hose off, and like I said, we'll bring you back. So you can see here we've got our factory hose removed off of our valve cover. It would go to our supercharger port here. And the second half of that pipe, you can see here, it's literally just a push-in tab. You just push that tab in, push in on the hose just ever so slightly, push your tab in. That will allow it to release, and then it'll kind of slide off, pretty easily. And the reason for the catch can, hopefully the camera will pick that up. You can see a little puddle of oil in there, in the bottom of that connector. You can also see that valve cover connection point there has also got a little bit of a sheen to it. And keep in mind that little puddle of oil, as well as what's inside the hose here, that this particular HellCat only has about 650 miles on it. And that's kind of what you see in there already. So you can imagine what the accumulation would look like over time, especially if you're doing track days and things of that nature and really getting on it and having that supercharger crank up. And again, that's the purpose of this catch can, is to catch that oil from being injected back into the engine. And that way it accumulates in the bottom of the can. When you do your oil change, or sooner, as you discover how quick this will fill up, you can just unscrew the bottom of this can, empty out the oil, and away that you go. But we're getting the hoses assembled here, and just like the instructions state, you'll see that little end piece just slides on. It doesn't really clip in place. It just kind of slides on there, and it's just there to cover up the end of the connection because it came with the braided hose option. So we're getting our first hose squared away here. And you can see that we've got our straight adapter and our end cover. And this is going to push in place right here on this other end, right here where the supercharger goes. And then once we get this in there, you'll see that that'll lock in place. These little side ears on this plastic adapter will just grab hold of this ridge that the factory pipe would normally run into. And that gives us our first pipe. I shouldn't say pipe, I should say hose. And then we'll work on getting our second one on there. Now the second one has a barb fitting as well, just a metal barb fitting, just like that plastic adapter did. And so does our catch can. Now even in Billet's instructions, they say that you can take just a little bit of oil, rub it on the outside of these barbs, and it'll help you put that hose on. You can also do what I'm going to do, and I've done this before, is take just a little bit of silicone spray or paste. Rubber parts love silicone. Now, since I'm dealing with a paste here, I'm just going to put a little bit on a Q-tip and put it right on the inside of the hose, and then make my connection. And that will allow it to slide onto this barb much easier. But we'll get the hose installed on here, and then when we get ready to make our catch can connections, we'll bring you back. So we've got our hose onto our valve cover at this point with our adapter. Same process as before. This little adapter will just slide into place, and these little plastic ears on this adapter will grab hold of this mounting ridge here that the factory hose would normally grab onto. You can also see that we got our catch can installed, which goes on again on that little mounting bolt that kind of sticks out right beside the belt, or just shy underneath the tensioner or the serpentine belt you can see there. And the kit does come with a lock washer and a nut, and it's a 17 millimeter. And you can see we've got it tightened in place, and we've got our rear hose on. So you can kind of see our two hoses and where they're going to line up here. So just based on length and kind of where they would naturally want to lay, looks like this one is going to end up going here, and the one here from the bottom will end up going to the side of the can here. And as I stated earlier, what we ended up doing again was just taking a little bit of silicone paste, not going too terrible crazy, not a big old glob of it, but just enough to barely make it look like you've done anything at all, and kind of one around the barb fittings here and here on the other side, just to make it a bit easier to put those hoses on. And because we did opt for the optional braided hoses, we're going to go ahead and put our end pieces on before we put our hoses in place. Otherwise, you can put your hoses in and then realize, oh, you got to take your hose off to get your little covered piece back on. But you can kind of see that covered piece there. It just serves to kind of dress up the end of the hose a little bit. Makes it look a little bit nicer. But we'll get our hoses on, and then we'll bring you back. So we've got our hoses installed, as you can see. And I did find it easier just to kind of take this one, since it wasn't attached, push it off to the side. It made getting this side hose on here a little bit easier. So this hose is on, and then we have our second hose that comes from our valve cover into our can here. I gotta tighten up my can a little bit. And it looks good. I'm not seeing any flat spots or any kinks in the hose on both of them. Looks a nice little fit. I did find that this one initially, when we put it on, had a little bit of a kink or flat spot here. And just by taking the hose like this and kind of rotating it a little bit this direction, was able to kind of get everything to kind of fall in place and get rid of that, just had just a little bit of a kink in there. But now it looks good. So what we're going to do next is we'll get our catch can tightened up, and then we'll put our valve cover. Well, not really covers, but I mean, I guess you can call them, I guess, valve cover covers, if you want to call them that. But they're mainly just, you know, the little engine cover type dress-up plates that cover up all your wiring and make everything look all nice, and, you know, have the Hemi logo on them. And then we'll bring you back in a bit. So we've got a catch can installed. As you can see here, you can see our bolt and our lock washer right down there. And you can see that I can push this catch can now and pretty much shake this entire vehicle so it's nice and tight and secure. And if I may offer a suggestion, that again, that's a 17mm bolt. As you're tightening, kind of wiggle your catch can. And then once your catch can gets secure, stop. As with any nut and bolt, you don't want to over-tighten it, and inadvertently strip the bolt or the threading on the nut, one of the two, and end up for kind of a bad day. Now, on the valve cover, it has a series of clips. One clip here, another one there, and then these claw-looking clips. And the claw-looking clips clip onto the fuel rail. And these round grommets will line up and fall into these little mounting points here. And this passenger side one is pretty easy to get on. Just have to kind of put the back in first. You'll notice I put the back in first, let it fall down a bit. Get it lined up with the fuel rail. As far as the claws on the top. And what I found with this is that you'll find, there we go, that the bottom, you'll feel the bottom kind of fall into position where it's sitting right on the outside of that mounting point. It just hasn't been seated. Once you feel that kind of fall in place a little bit, you can then push the back in. You may have heard that, and you'll hear those clips definitely clip into that fuel rail. Now I took the bottom off the catch can so you can kind of see this. You have more than enough room to unscrew the bottom of this catch can, keep it straight, push it off to the side, and get it out of here without worry about smelling it on your belt or your tensioner, alternator, and other various engine bits. And as you can see, getting it back in, you just kind of go back in from the bottom, get it lined back up. As with any machined part, there we go. Sorry for the camera work, guys. I kind of have to hold this and do this so you can get a better view of this. But as you can see, we can get our bottom of our catch can reinstalled. It's nice and tight. They've got a nice little gnarled edge on here so you can get a nice grip on it. It's now threaded and back in place. So just to let you know that you can drop that and get that installed without any clearance issues of where this is currently mounted. But that will finish this install on the passenger side. And like I said, the driver side does have an option for that as well. But I'm going to have to contact them and see what I'll have to do as far as any modifications that may be made. Because again, the connection point, because of this newer style airbox, again, the same airbox that my understanding is the Demon would have, that this 2019, again, it came from the factory. We didn't order this as an option. Has that valve where that hose comes off of the corner of that valve cover. And these hoses that were sent with the kit were meant for the other style where you'd have a different airbox here and you'd be tying your plumbing for your catch can into a component on this end. And my component is now on this end. So I'm going to send some pictures to Billet Technologies tomorrow and see what they've got to say. See if they need to ship me any different pieces or hoses. If I can shorten up the hoses that I already have, we'll use these as well as the hardware that came with it. If they have to send me anything different, then once I receive the pieces and or instructions on how I can retrofit my existing kit, then we'll do a second video as kind of a follow-up and show you the driver side install. But you can see here, it's a bit more crowded. Getting the valve cover off, or valve dress-up cover off, I should say, isn't too terrible. But in this case, we did have to remove the oil filler cap to make removing that cover a bit easier. But we'll get back into that. And we'll also be bringing you back with various other Billet Technologies dress-up kits. We got covers for the fuse box, covers for the supercharger, cooler, the normal coolant tank, and the radiator coolant tank. So it should be fun. And if I may make one suggestion, if you're looking for Billet parts, I've been happy with Billet Technology's items. Absolutely no issue with the fit or the finish. I did order these during the what they call the People's Sale of 2019, again, when the HellCat was originally ordered. Yes, and I've had them this long and just now getting around to installing them, again, due to waiting for the vehicle to arrive and the garage to be built, things of that nature. And we'll be bringing you back to show you the other little bits and pieces and other dress-up kit items that were also ordered for this vehicle. But we'll bring you back for all that, and I hope this has been useful, and we shall chat at you later. Bye.